Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when and where you're watching this. I hope that whenever and wherever that is, you and yours are healthy and safe during our rather challenging times. This is Lesson 25, Dictators, and I'll be walking through the slides to start off, and then I'll talk about the two books that the two student presenters did not choose. So maybe it's not fair. I always get the books that are left over that nobody else wants. On the other hand, I chose them all, so I guess that's pretty fair. It all works out. All right, we start off with the cartoon that actually Gabby found so intriguing. I didn't, when I chose to put up here, I didn't know she was going to highlight it in her video as well. But it really is just a classic of the relationship between these two men that never met, but had so much in common and came to do so much damage to the world around them. Okay, looking over administration, I do want to emphasize the course feedback is now open and will be until after finals. I really do rely heavily on course feedback, especially since I've never taught this course before. So I'm going to need to hear from you as to how it went and how, if I teach it again in the future, how I might be able to improve it. Those of you who have worked with me before, which you've probably heard this spiel, but I'll repeat a little bit of it anyway. I really do take course feedback seriously, and if you had some value from this course, you owe something to the people who gave me feedback in the past that enabled me to do something positive. If you've gained nothing at all from this course, then I really need to know about that. So I do take feedback seriously, and by the way, I apply that to all the courses. I read every single bit of feedback that any history, political science, philosophy, or geography professor gets every semester, and it's important. We all take it seriously, especially me. Okay. I did not, as I'd hoped, get caught entirely up on grading over the weekend. I still have your second annotated bibliographies to do. I should be able to get through those by the end of the day tomorrow, on Wednesday. Some of you have been asking questions about the peer review assignment, and essentially, I'm asking you guys to get in touch with each other and share papers. It's obviously, at least obvious to me, that you gain the most advantage by having somebody look at your paper. If you don't feel ready to do that yet, I understand, but I still encourage you, wherever you are at in your writing process, to go ahead and volunteer your work to somebody. If you're somehow not finding somebody, email me and I'll match you up. But I don't want to do that. I really want to let you choose whose paper you want to look at, and just go ahead and ask. The worst they can say is no. This is, not a marriage proposal that's getting shot down. Once you have somebody else's paper, I recommend perhaps in Word as a Word document or as a PDF, however you want to do it, that you make your comments. If you're in Word or something equivalent to that, I advise you to use the track changes and comments functions to add in the various things and changes. Hopefully you're providing really good feedback to the person who's writing it, and then I will look at the feedback you're providing. Assigning points to this is in some ways just to kind of hammer home the point that I really do want you sharing your work with other people, and I want you providing good substantive feedback like we've discussed, not changing happy to glad or saying you need a comma here, but really engaging with the argument and helping your peer improve it. All right, that's about it for administration. I haven't changed the summer and fall course update slide, but I do want to emphasize that if you're not graduating, to please go ahead and get registered as soon as possible. I know that, oops, sorry, forgot to turn the phone off. Anyway, I know that you've got a lot going on right now, more than in most semesters, most likely. But at the same time, I and other people in the administration are going to be making decisions about what courses to keep and what to get rid of. And right now things are at the administrative level just as confused as you can imagine. So if we don't know that a course is going to go, if we don't know that students want a particular course, it's likely to get cut because of the financial damage that the university is taking as a result of the shutdown. So I guess what I'm asking is, if at all possible, get registered soon. And if you're not sure, don't hesitate. Go ahead and register, reserve your spot, and later on drop the course if you don't think you're going to need it. Um, on that note, advising is available via email, via phone, via Zoom. So get in touch if you need help getting things settled for next semester. Okay. For the job hunt, I usually don't post jobs from universities because you're kind of familiar with the idea of being a history professor, and I'm trying to expose you to jobs that are a little different than what you might assume a history major can do. But this is a good one at Pitt. A research associate working for the University of Pittsburgh World History Center. As you can see, the duties involve funding, they involve editorial review, doing research, and essentially running an academic center, which is really kind of a neat thing. It's not a it's not a teaching position, even though it's associated with a university. So it is something kind of different. And it's in Pittsburgh, which is an absolutely wonderful place to live, even if you do have to work at Pitt, which is the arch rival of my alma mater, Penn State. All right, moving on to the writing tip. Last time we talked about how to document websites. This is about how to document things that you find on the web that aren't websites. Books, journals, newspapers, i.e. things that have an existence independent of the web. And the idea here is, as always, you need to convey enough information that somebody can follow up, that somebody can recreate your research. So you need to provide more than just the web information, but also the information about the publication that you're referring to. So here we have an example from a scholarly journal, and another from a newspaper. But again, these are things that exist outside of the internet. And so you need to provide enough information that somebody can find it kind of either way. All right. Well, here we are with our topic assignments. We finished up prisoners. Today is dictators. On Thursday, we're looking forward to Gabby and Nathan doing Allied leadership. So that should be fun too. All right. Moving on to dictators. Corey and Gabby both did a great job. Corey, love the enthusiasm. I'm glad the books were so exciting for you. So they have covered Bullock's Hitler and Stalin, Kershaw's first volume of his Hitler biography, Mann's Fascists, and Morehouse's Devil's Alliance, leaving me with the second half of Kershaw's biography and Stalin and his hangmen. I got to say, I kind of expected I would be doing either both of Kershaw's Hitler books or neither of them. I'm kind of amused to be doing just one of them, but that's the way it works out. And I will start with it, and as Gabby intimated, it is indeed actually thicker than the first volume. I read somewhere, I can't remember what, put together it's close to 2,000 pages, something like 1,900 pages, if you look at the two books together. But really, I'm following up with what Gabby had to say. The story picks up in 1936 after the successful German reoccupation of the Rhineland, and Kershaw identifies that at the point where Hitler began to believe himself to be infallible, that he literally couldn't do anything wrong, with disastrous consequences for Germany. So the second part of his biography, 1936 to 1945, Nemesis, talks about Hitler at the height of his power. But Kershaw, as a biographer, is not just interested in the individual. This isn't just what did Hitler do. This is about Hitler's relationship with the German people. And that not only did Hitler begin to believe himself to be infallible, the German people, for the most part, went along with it, especially the high leadership of the Nazi Party, the German state, and especially the German military. After the war, it became very popular. So, oh, Hitler's this crazy guy. He was always interfering with things. If he'd just listened to us and done what we said, everything would have been fine. Kershaw, that's a load of crap. Kershaw proves it. Showing that most of the leadership of Germany at this point either agreed with Hitler, agreed with him enthusiastically, or at the very least offered only minor objections to his proposals. So Germany enters the war not with a great deal of enthusiasm like World War I, but certainly with a great deal of confidence that Hitler is going to lead them to success after success. And there's an irony there because Hitler believed that he had to lead his people to success after success. And if he didn't, then, then he would lose support. So he is always looking for the next win, always looking for the next victory, always looking for the next triumph that he can show his people to maintain his power and to maintain his authority. Without getting into the nitty-gritty, Kershaw does a great job of describing Hitler as a leader. Following up what Gabby said, he's reluctant to take on authority and responsibility. He is lazy in terms of following through with bureaucratic detail. That really changes following the defeat at Stalingrad. At that point, he sort of flips gears and becomes something of a micromanager. Not an effective one, but nevertheless constantly interested in a level of detail that he hadn't been before as he tries to recover from an irrecoverable disaster. Other points that Kershaw makes that are important is the idea that the Holocaust, genocide, is not a byproduct of Hitler and the Nazi system. It is the point of it. The genocide is the central function, if you will, of the Nazi state. Even though Hitler himself at no point apparently ever sat down and said, okay, time to carry out genocide, time to carry out the Holocaust, time to eliminate the Jews. What Kershaw talks about, and I've mentioned this before, is the idea of working towards the Fuhrer, that because Hitler didn't ever really give these sort of specific instructions, at least not until after Stalingrad, most of the apparatus, the bureaucracy of the German state and in the Nazi party spent a lot of time saying, okay, what would Hitler do? What would Hitler want? Hitler has given us these sort of vague goals of making Germany a great power and expanding Germany and making Germany pure, racially pure. How do we go about doing that? Well, the genocide that emerges, the horrors of the Holocaust, are directly attributable to the system established by Hitler and his cronies. That's I think, a fairly decent summary of what Kershaw has to offer here. Put together, these two books are the definitive biography of Hitler and his relationship with the German people. Coming somewhat after when Bullock was writing, Kershaw's had access to more sources. It's also worth noting that a lot of what his digressions, if you will, he's really engaging with other Hitler scholars. So he's really getting into the historiography of Hitler and the Nazis, which is something that we as historians are always on the lookout for. He is engaging in a conversation with other historians, not just telling a story. All right, switching to Stalin, who is Hitler's equal in blood-soaked horror. Donald Rayfeld, Stalin and his hangmen, the tyrant and those who killed for him. It has some parallels to what Kershaw's talking about, because what Kershaw's talking about is not just Hitler the dictator, but Hitler and his relationship to the German people and his idea of working toward the Fuhrer, how average bureaucrats, soldiers, party functionaries, etc., tried to carry out the ruler's will in a horribly bloody manner. And Rayfield rather, is doing kind of the same thing. He's talking about a pyramid with Stalin at the apex, but with a whole slew of willing collaborators at various levels, from Stalin's inner circle all the way down to the sadistic torturers and jailers carrying out the will of the dictator as they see it at the lowest levels. Rayfield is especially strong in talking about the relationship between Stalin and his successive chiefs of secret police, Dzerzhinsky, Yezhov, Yagoda, Beria, who are monsters in their own right. These are horrible people. They're sadists. They are cruel. Beria was a serial sexual predator. Just horrifying excuses for human beings. But all united in, at least to some degree, their belief that the horrors they were carrying out was somehow going to bring bring the communist paradise about by eliminating all its enemies. It's a moderately insane interpretation to believe that by spilling so much blood and causing so much horror and terror and death, that you're somehow going to make the world a better place. It doesn't make a lot of sense unless you truly, sincerely believed that you are surrounded by enemies. And that's something else that Hitler and Stalin have in common, is a degree of paranoia and an insane degree of paranoia. And yes, they did have enemies, but not to that extent. Yes, hello, Trapper. I have a Labrador attempting to place a tennis ball in my lap because he thinks that's a lot more important than talking about dictators. And in the long run, perhaps he's probably right, but he'll get a good head scratch while we wait. Anyway, Stalin and his hangman is based on this idea of a pyramid, this idea of multiple levels of involvement, of complicity, of enthusiastic embrace. So it's not simply the dictator. It's not simply Stalin imposing his will on an innocent populace. It is about a structure of destruction, a structure of terror that is carried out. And it's worth noting that this structure of terror actually consumes everyone who's involved in it. There are very few people who make it out alive, if you will, except Stalin himself, who actually dies of natural causes. But his various subordinates often are consumed by the machine that they helped create, i.e. they become scapegoats for parts of the system that go awry or that go so far that they develop criticism. And this helps Stalin maintain power, because it becomes a very common sort of trope in Soviet society that, well, maybe bad things are happening in this place or at this time, but they're certainly not happening because Stalin wants them to. In fact, they're happening in spite of what Stalin wants for the people. They're happening because Stalin is listening to bad advice, or because people are doing things that Stalin doesn't know about. And that's an idea that will carry on long after Stalin's death, that he is not responsible for the crimes of his regime. Rayfield's very thorough research into archival sources makes it abundantly clear that that is not the case, that Stalin is just as responsible as Hitler for the horrors that were perpetrated in the name of their regimes, even in the places where they neither one of them perhaps signed a document saying, yes, be terrible. I think that's about enough right now. Looking at Allied leadership on Thursday is probably going to be a lot more uplifting than what we did today, but it was important. Again, what we're doing with these discussions is we're looking at all sorts of different ways to cut World War II and to look at from different angles. And from here, we had some interesting ones. We had straight up biographies looking at so-called great men of history, certainly not good ones, and their role in comparative by themselves. And then we had Mann's Fascists, which is a sociologist looking at history. And it's worth noting, one of the things Corey mentioned was he doesn't use a lot of primary sources, and that's usually the case with our friends from sociology and political science and other social sciencey disciplines. They tend to use the things that we produce, history, as their material to build on, and that's okay. We'll let them. It gives us something to do too. Keeps us employed writing. All right, wherever you are, I hope you and yours are safe. I hope you and yours are healthy. Keep following our medical experts' guidance. I'm a doctor, but not the kind of doctor that can help you. Listen to the kinds of doctors that can. Hope everybody's doing well, and we'll talk again soon. Goodbye.